Hello, everyone, and welcome back to to the Realm, a rereaders podcast for the Realm of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb. I'm Kayiu, here with Alex and Leah, and today we're going to be covering chapters 6 through 10 of Assassin's Quest. So last time, we went through the start of the book in which Fitz slowly returns to himself as a human, ends up cutting off ties with his close friends, Burge and Shade, and resolves himself finally to kill Regal. And this time we're going to be covering the actual end of that attempt, or like his travel overland to Tradeford, and then his incredibly failed attempt on Regal's life, and him coping with essentially the loss of Night Eyes, who leaves him right before he goes to kill Regal. But as we get into the actual start of this podcast, just a reminder that it is spoilers all, so there will be spoilers not only for this book and the other books in this trilogy, but every book in the series that Hobb has written. So if you haven't finished the Realm of the Elderlings series, finish reading those books and then come back and listen to us. I think with that, we can get into Chapter 6, The Wit and the Skill.
It has been a long time since I read this, so I genuinely don't remember like the breakdown of each chapters.
and it's weird because like until we hit Tradeford, because of Fitz like constantly moving, it almost has like a sort of like dreamlike pacing because it's like I was here, then I was here, then we were in a new environment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I feel like all the chapters blend together.
Mm-hmm.
Big time. But I think this is where he meets Black Rolf, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I forgot that happened this early. Like, I think that I was talking with Julie about this as well, where like I didn't give this book enough credit for how much stuff happens, even though there are long like moments of traveling. Like I think in my memory, I had like the opposite of rose-colored glasses. Like I was like, man, this book like stuff takes so long, and like they're just always traveling. It's like there's events peppered throughout which are significant.
And I feel like at least for like the first time reading it, you think everything's going to happen so quickly because we're what? Well, I mean, we will have been like 8 chapters in and already Fitz has like gotten to Tradeford and you're like, well, this has got to be like the end of the book because he's going to kill Regal and that's going to be that.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, that is not how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, when I was first reading this, I was so anxious for him to get to Verity. Like it drove me crazy that he was going to Tradeford instead of just going to Verity when he knew Verity was alive. So it all felt like, oh, he's taking forever and he's doing all this stupid stuff instead of just going straight to Verity. So it felt more like it dragged on, but there's a lot of shit that goes down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Black Rolf is the first Old Blood member that Fitz meets, and the Old Blood being the kind of proper or like polite term for the wit. And basically, Black Rolf is drunk. He and is spewing anti-Regal sentiments. Gets the shit beat out of him by the guards, but Fitz is like, someone who hates Regal. He just like me for real. And then pairs up with him, and Rolf essentially feels that he is also witted, invites him back to his house, and is like, "Hey, you should stay and learn, Old Blood." But Fitz is still jaded from his previous encounter with the minstrel group, and is like, "Actually, no human contact for me ever again."
Well, speaking of the minstrel group, this is where Fitz leaves them. And I just love the way that Hobb kind of writes how Fitz communicates during this section because we know that, what's his name? Minstrel Josh or Harper Josh or whatever. We know that he is blind, but Fitz primarily like first goes to nonverbal communication. Like that's always been what he does. Like I think especially like since he was a child because of Nosy, like he just kind of uses his wit and his body language before he ever even thinks to communicate with his voice. And then this one section just kind of stuck out to me. When Fitz is like refusing to go into the inn with them, he says, "I shook my head, then spoke my refusal. Thank you, but I won't be going in with you. I'm moving on." And just like the fact that Fitz still uses his like body language first, and that we see that, and then him realize, oh, like this guy's blind, he can't see me shaking my head, so I have to use my words. Like I really liked that.
I didn't even pick that out, but that's a super good point, and it's very, like, true to his character. It's one of those subtle ways that we see that he, like, hasn't changed since he was 6 and everyone had to be like,
Yeah.
speak to us, use words.
Yeah, he still has to be reminded, even to a blind guy, like, I can't shake my head because this guy's not gonna see it.
Right.
Yeah, if
One
anything,
thing,
it's not that he hasn't changed, it's that he's gotten worse. Just because, like, just like going fully merged with Night Eyes.
Yeah, learning to become human again. He's probably, like, a couple months out, and he's, like, still getting used to using words again.
Mhm.
one thing that I thought was interesting in this chapter, in the intro, they're kind of explaining how minstrels and scribes are similar, um, in terms of like both being important to capture history, but instead of like competing with each other, they kind of complement each other and often will travel together. And I thought it was interesting that like Fitz, who pretty much always wanted to be a scribe, and when he ends up like pulling himself up in his cabin, he's constantly writing things down and like basically being a scribe. And then he raises Hap, and Hap ends up being a minstrel. Okay, I don't know if that was it's just a coincidence or if it was intentional, but I thought it was interesting.
That's totally really cool. I didn't even like, that didn't click with me. The only thing that I was thinking of when I was reading the intros was like, wow, minstrels and scribes are definitely like their world lawyers, because they do exactly what lawyers do for us.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, what I was thinking when I was reading that was there's a line about like how they do the constant witnessing of small events that make up life's fabric. And I was just thinking like this is exactly what the fool was talking about, like in the last one in like their rant, the last book where they're like, isn't that
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, I wish that we got to see the fool interact with a minstrel that wasn't Starling, or like a scribe that wasn't Fitz, because Fitz, yeah, he's a scribe when he goes into his cabin, but he's also like he's like self-admittedly like, man, I tried to write about other stuff, but it keeps coming back to me. Like
Yeah.
I feel like a normal scribe or minstrel would have the fool like just super gleeful, like, yes, tell me about all the random gossip. I want to hear it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think there's one more thing that I have to talk about. Oh, there's a couple things still with, like, the minstrels and, like, like, all of them, but in one sec oh, no, this is actually with never mind. That was with, the Old Blood. There's a lot of stuff I have to say about them, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a bit I have to say too about the old blood. Do we have anything else about the minstrels before we move on to
Nah, I think we can skip.
Let's get to the meaty parts.
Hmm.
yeah, the meaty parts?
I mean, kind of literally, because they were like, "Here's all of the salmon. Here's all," and like
Yeah.
Fitz is like, "Food?
Chucking meat
Really?"
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally just like,
Um, I liked that because Black Rolf says something about um he's explaining how he was bonded to Hilda, the bear.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Well, when I was of age, I went out and I made my quest and to find my like bond creature or whatever he describes it as." And he's like, "You Fitz is kind of baffled by the idea of looking for it, and Night Eyes says, 'I believe you sought me that day and that I called out for you, though neither of us knew at the time what we were seeking.'" And I feel like we kind of said that when we were reading the last book too. Like they're pulled towards each other because they both have this, they both feel like caged and angry. And they're like seeking a companion because they're alone in that like wealth of emotion. So I thought it was cool that Night Eyes basically called out exactly what we all already said.
And
Yeah, and I
oh,
think
sorry,
that
go ahead.
Night Eyes knew that before, but, like, he just never he needed to think about it or, like, put into words until someone had brought it up, and Fitz was like, "No, that didn't happen," and I just was like, actually it did."
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the description of like the quest itself because he's like, yeah, I just went out in the forest and just like took a bunch of drugs and like meditated, but like okay, joking aside, like the way he described it reminded me a lot of like when Ketrican was meditating, just like reaching out to the world, being at one with it. So I was like, I wonder if like lots of these mountain traditions came from like a sort of like old blood culture that sort of has just like the roots of like where it's come from has been like dilapidated over the years, but like the principles are still there.
I could see it for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I am baffled by the fact that the forge ones are like attracted to the wit because I totally forgot. And I also just think it's really bizarre because like them being attracted to the skill makes sense because I could see the pale woman being like wipe out skilled
Yeah.
ones or whatever, but like it just seems crazy that even though they have this absence of any semblance of life, which you would think would mean they don't have any inkling of the wit, they're still like drawn to it because Black Rolf says that old blood is more likely to get attacked.
Hmm.
I wonder if it's kind of like they can feel because the wit is like it's like life and the essence of life and like being able to feel that. I wonder if like they can kind of feel only when people are using the wit, they can like feel it because like that is the strongest form of life and like living and like the strongest form of like connection between two beings or multiple beings and they kind of like either they miss that or they're just drawn to it and they don't know why and then like they just, you know, do what they do,
Or
which
like
is really
given the
interesting.
chapter title and like our previous like kind of musings about this, it could be like wit and the skill are very similar in that
Oh,
regard.
yeah.
They,
Yeah, for sure.
They came from the same parent magic
mhm.
and split off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they had like I forget who it was, like Shade or Verity or someone who was like theorizing like they're might not be that they're purposefully attracted to the skill, but it's like a combination of like that it's common, or if it is, it could be a combination of like purposefully being pushed towards the skill, but also like they're just sort of like attracted to it because it's something they've lost and they're like they're like I don't know how to grapple with this sort of thing. Um,
Speaking of the wit and stuff, I just think that it's funny that Fitz thinks that he, like, only gets the wit from his mom's side of the family, when I mean, as long as you've read The Piebald Prince, we know otherwise.
Right.
mhm.
It's somewhere in the Farseer line. And, well, I was gonna say I wouldn't be surprised if Chivalry had it, but I think Burrich would have known. And Burrich was, like, so appalled
Yeah.
Fitz had it that I feel like Chivalry probably didn't, but
Well, Chivalry could have, and he, like,
hit it really
very
well.
purposefully, like, shut it off completely and, like, never once tried to reach out because he grew up in the kingdom and, like, knowing all of these horrible stereotypes, and I think that, like, the prejudice like, against witted people was worse when he was growing up, and then it, like, started, like, dwindling down for a little bit and then kind of got brought back up to its height with Regal. So, like, he probably knew, and, like, even if he had, like, an inkling of it, he knew not to, like, do anything with it.
Mhm. I could also see like Verity having like that low level of wit sensitivity, just from like the way he describes like being with
Leon.
Leon. Yeah, like
Yeah.
Well, I feel like he doesn't, but it would be kind of cool to see, like, if he knew that chivalry did, but chivalry didn't do anything about it, and, like, that's, like, why he's so accepting and, like, still thinks of Fitz as, like, himself, not as, like, a beast magic user when he does find out about Night Eyes and everything.
and
Right.
then that could also add an additional angle to like why Birch is like I failed his father because he's like man chivalry was able to control it and he would because Birch has this whole thing about like how my entire life was modeled after chivalry and he showed me how to be a man and
Yeah.
part of that could have been like how to
Hiding
suppress
the
the
wit.
wit. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
He was man enough to resist it.
Mhm.
That's an interesting angle, especially considering Verity never seems surprised. Like when Fitz says how much do you know and Verity's like more than you think I know.
Mhm.
He's kind of just like bemused. He's not
He's like,
surprised.
"This is just how it is, like, it's
Right. And
fine."
even Shade is like a little bit taken aback, but then he's just like, "Well, we have to use the tools that we're given." He's not like astounded.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an interesting
It definitely felt
angle.
like Verity was just, like, accepting, and Shade was just sort of like, "This weirds me out, but, you know, the
Right.
any port in a storm."
Well, I think he also was, like, he, like, reverted to, like, his assassin ways, and he's like, "This isn't something that I have time to think about right now, so I'm going to set it aside, and I'll think about it, like, when
Later.
everyone is safer and when I have some downtime, but, like, let's just move forward and use what we need to."
No time to
Right.
unpack all of that.
Yeah. Have some kerosene instead.
Ugh.
Mhm,
I am so mad at Shade for giving Fitz kerosene at the end of Royal Assassin. Like it's just the worst thing he could have done.
mhm,
It's so funny to read, but it is definitely the worst decision that Shade has made yet.
mhm.
Right.
Fitz's dad stop passing on their maladaptive habits to him challenge, impossible.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought it was funny when Fitz is kind of musing on Holly and Black Rolf, and he says, I wondered uncomfortably if I had as many wolf mannerisms as he had bear and Holly had hawk, because my brain just went, you do. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Freezing in the face of danger when you show your neck and, like, soft spots to show that you're, like, not a threat, like, fits.
and he
You're
probably is
mostly
even
wolf.
worse at this point in his life than any other point in his life, because so recently he was like pure
Wolf.
wolf.
Yeah. It's funny that he, like, even thought that he wouldn't have any mannerisms or that he was, like,
Right,
so sly and subtle about his, like, "Boy, you're
right.
no different."
You and Night Eyes are basically one creature.
Yeah.
mhm,
Like,
What I was really surprised about is that Fitz didn't freak out when Holly suggested, like, a mate for him and, like, how they would be so well together and, like, how everything would happen, like, he would have freaked out in the past and been like, "I don't love anyone else, like, I just have Molly." Like, he didn't even I don't even think he thought about Molly
I
really in
think
that situation, and I was like, "What the heck?"
I think he was so focused on just leaving that he wasn't even considering anything they said to him.
Yeah, it was just like, "This isn't relevant because I'm going to be gone, like, now."
Right. Right. But
I
you're
was
right.
just
That
shocked.
a year ago Fitz would have been like,
He would have
"Hey,
freaked
this
out
is
on them
Molly."
and been
Yeah.
like, "I have a wife. She may not be a wife that I can acknowledge to the world, but she's my wife in my heart."
She's my wife. Because we had sex one time and now we're married.
Yeah.
That's how it
It's
works.
love. I said she's my wife, and so she is.
See, Fedrin asked me to be his apprentice once, and I might not have said yes, but that basically makes me a scribe, so I can say that we're married.
Yeah.
Um, I had like two more notes. The first one is kind of small. Um, there's a part where like they're just meeting the I forget what Black Rolf's bear is, but like he's like
Hilda.
Hilda, got you. He's like he shook his head as vigorously as a wet dog, and I'm like, no, you could have done a bear metaphor. What are
Yeah.
you doing, Hob? Come on.
It was a missed opportunity.
Hmm.
Oh, for sure.
I
Just
remember
so
the
used to
bear's
dog
name
metaphors,
so
just
like
autopilots them.
Yeah.
the bear's name is so like German milkmaid that it stands out to me. Like, why is the bear named Hilda?
Why does she have a human name? I feel like she's the
Right.
only one that's got, like, a people name. Like, he
Right.
must have named her himself, right? There's no way she
She
came to him and
was
was
like
like, "Here's my
passing by
name."
a town and heard it and was just like, I like it. It'll be mine now too.
Yeah. Weird.
Oh yeah, my last note is the when he's leaving Harper Josh says, "Whatever it is, Cobb, I think time will make it better. It does most things, you know." And Fitz is like, "Sometimes. Other things don't get better until you mend them, one way or another." And it's like Fitz has this amazing ability to have like the right attitude but towards the wrong things, where it's like it doesn't make sense to like feel that way right now. Or, like I guess it kind of makes sense, but then like later on when he's in the cabin, he's like, "You know what? Time can solve this. I don't have to go out and do anything. I can just sit in my cabin forever." And I'm like, "No, just if only you had this attitude then, we could have changed so much."
I wonder though, like isolated himself all that time.
I mean, I think he could have at least had like
Maybe
I
him and Ketchikan would have ended up together or
Oh
something.
god, I would love that.
honestly,
That
probably.
would have been
Maybe
really
him and
great.
Celerity would have ended up together.
Please. That would have been great.
Yeah, it would have.
Honestly, I
He
want it
probably would
just
have
for
ended
like
up with
Patience.
Molly.
Patience deserves it. Patience deserves to know that he lived.
Yes.
Yes. And Burrich, like, he could have rekindled his relationship with both of his, like, parental figures.
Hmm. Like
Right.
I can understand not like I feel like if he was to come back to Burke, he would never like tell Burke or Molly like. But like I feel like if he went and talked to Patience and Ketrican, they would like find a way
It-
to break the news to them in a good way. They would be like, "Don't worry, Fitz. We know you can't do it because you have no tact, but we do."
Yeah. Burrich would be mortified.
Yeah, that's the
Like,
problem with Fitz.
he
He's
would
like,
leave Molly immediately,
mhm.
even though that's definitely not the right decision to make. But you know he would do it. He'd be like, "Shit, like, I fucked up so bad."
Right. And then Molly would be mad at both of them because she'd be like, "Do you think that I can't choose? Like you guys have
Yeah.
to choose for me
Mhm.
who I'm
Yeah.
gonna end up with."
Yeah, they're both so like this is the thing with like Fitz and also Burge, but like they're both like so extreme. When they do something, they can't do half measures. Like Fitz is like, well, if I come back, I have to reveal myself to everyone, so I can't do that. Or like right now, he's like, well, I had like one bad experience with being around people, so I'm not going to be around people ever again. And it's like you can have a middle ground.
I don't think he realizes that there is the option of, like, middle ground and balance and moderation. It's not a thing for him.
No.
I don't have anything else. All I wanna say is, like, I wish we had a whole book about the Old Blood just because 'cause I'm so, like, curious about all of it, and I feel like we don't get that much ever.
It always really bugged me whenever I was reading Tawny Man that Fitz would never hear Webb out because I want to hear what Webb has to say. And Fitz is just not interested and will never listen. And I'm like, just talk to him because I want to learn more about
I
Old
know.
Blood. It's my only
Please.
vehicle to learn.
I know.
Yeah, like it's so frustrating having Fitz be the only narrator sometimes. I wish we had
Yes.
like a like for Ender's Game they had like the Ender Shadow with like a different protagonist and like perspective. I wish we had that here where it's like just the exact same story but like from a different character's perspective so we get like more of it.
Right.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I get why Fitz moves on, but also like Black Rolf is right, where like he should have stayed. He just doesn't understand how to use the wit, or like and like the things that like Black Rolf like brings up, like what are you gonna do when Night Eyes like runs away with the pack? Happens like next chapter. What are you gonna do when one of you dies? Fitz is like, don't worry, I have an excellent coping mechanism. Doesn't think about it ever. The
Bury emotions.
bury
Yeah.
emotions. Treat with elf bark twice weekly.
Yeah. I just feel like if I was Fitz and I was told that I'm like basically just screaming the wit out to the world and like screaming my thoughts out as an assassin and like having Shade have trained me, the first thing that I would have to do is learn how to quiet myself down. Like,
I would be so anxious that everyone could hear everything.
yeah. And he's like, I just won't think.
Doesn't
Like,
care.
we just won't talk. We'll talk in like one word. You're still yelling that word out to everybody, you guys. Like, please. What?
I feel like Tawny Man era Fitz would be like, okay, so tell me, you know all the old blood? Okay, give me an itemized list. I'm gonna go kill all of them because no one
Yeah.
can know what I've been saying.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think with that we can move on to the next chapter, Pharaoh.
Yes.
So there's a bunch of like little things that happen in this chapter, but the main thing is Fitz finally hits the Duchy of Pharaoh, travels through, and eventually at the lots of it is like Fitz being like, "Oh boy, I sure do love being alone with my only friend left in the world, Night Eyes. Sure hope something doesn't happen to him." And at the end of this chapter, Night Eyes stumbles upon a pack of wolves and decides that it's his time to go and learn about his people.
He's like, I'll see you later. I won't tell you when, but one of these days we'll see each other again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny that he tells Fitz, like, wait right here, I'll be back. And we know he's not back for like weeks or months. And he
Yeah.
just like, wait right here.
Yeah. Don't move. I'll be back in a minute. Has no concept of time.
Right.
It definitely gives me like big parent in like a Walmart or a Target or something. Like just stand right here, and then they come back. It's like, oh no, where are they?
Or you put the kid in line and you're like, oh, I forgot something. Like, just wait here. I'll be back in a couple minutes. And then they're like, they
It
have to
takes
pay
forever.
because they've all checked out and you're like coming back to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's super apparent how Night Eyes' like lack of time perception comes through.
Oh, for sure.
Big time. The intro talks about patience and how she like becoming Lady of Buckkeep. She has all these like guards that are kind of on her side, and they start running messages, and they're called like ivy runners because I think they carry, is it that they carry a piece of ivy to like signify where they're coming from. But they talked about like an 11-year-old one that ran a bunch of messages and like I think burnt her red ship or something like that, but it said her name was Pansy and it said she did not live to be 13, but her deeds will be long remembered. And I just thought that was so sad because it's like taking a break from Fitz to kind of show us like this red ship thing is still happening, and here's like a real person affected by it that was only 11, that was like a war hero.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of interesting because it's almost like you can kind of like compare contrast it to Fitz, where it's like it's a young person motivated by revenge but the way that they act it out is like Pansy ends up like giving her life for the cause, but like Fitz is sort of like it's sort of like almost like a mirror of Fitz, where like but Fitz is doing it the wrong way, where he's doing it for like selfish reasons and he's like expecting to die, or he's like, well, it doesn't matter if I die. Where it's like I don't think that's what Pansy was thinking, but she ended up like losing her life in service of the cause anyways.
Well, and I think that it's really sad and it shows kind of how difficult life is during times of war and like times of hardship in your country and how like everyone who's passionate like fights the cause in their own way and like Patience doesn't go out and like fight on the warship, but she's doing so much as well and like every little person is kind of doing their part. Kind of like going back to what the fool said, how like even individual people should think that they can change the world. Like I think all of these people, especially Pansy, thought that like she can, change the tides of the fate or of like the war
Mm-hmm.
by helping and by, being a participant.
Well, and Patience wouldn't be letting an 11-year-old be an Ivy runner unless shit was dire.
Yeah, unless she was desperate.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's that line, right, where what is the line? Where it's like a tower doesn't crumble, or a tower seldom crumbles from the bottom up, and it's like, yeah, like it makes sense. Like you have to like care about the common people, and I also felt like in the moment it's like, yeah, okay, the common people are the ones who are like the foundation and who can help out. But I also felt like it was sort of like, yeah, that's why that's why the whole kingdom has gone to shit, is because the leadership of the Farseers was bad to non-existent. The tower crumbled from the top.
Yeah. Right. Speaking of Patience, can we just acknowledge the fact that she is and will forever be the GOAT? Because
yeah,
like
she's a boss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that she's incredible. And like if Chivalry could see how she was right then taking charge and like everything, he would be so proud of her. Like, and I wish that someone would tell her that so that she knows, like, and she would be so embarrassed to like have someone tell her something like that, but it would mean the world to her. Because like I feel like everything that she does is like trying to make Chivalry proud or like do right by Chivalry, and she does that. Like, and she embodies so many of the characters, like the traits that Chivalry had, which is like caring for all of her people, not just the ones of the status, and like rising to like be the person and the leader that they need when no one else is going to rise to the occasion. Like she's just incredible and I love her so much, especially like when she's still mourning the loss of her son and like the fact that Buckkeep is like barren now and she still is just fighting the fight. Like,
yeah,
I really want to know if ghosts exist in this universe, in this world, because like I just want to know if Chivalry has any inkling.
I think that he's got to, because like I feel like what we
people being
know about the skill. Yeah,
right.
what we know about the skill, I think that he definitely, like, he may not know, like, who he is anymore or any of that stuff, but, like, I feel like he still is around in some form.
and like I don't know if I would read it this way, but you can definitely read like when in the first book, Fitz is like skilling
of the last trilogy.
Oh no, the first book of this like the literal first book where like he's reaching out with the skill and like he touches Patience and she's like Chivalry, which like you could maybe read that as like obviously it's because like Fitz is super similar to Chivalry, but it could also be because maybe Chivalry sometimes has actually reached out to her. In like
And in the first book of the last trilogy, when Patience is dying, like right before she dies, she's like Chivalry. And like I think that Fitz thought that it was Patience looking at her or at him and like mistaking him for Chivalry, but I think that she wasn't looking at Fitz. Like I think she was like looking in front of Fitz or something like that. Like it wasn't Fitz who she was looking at, so it could have been like Chivalry coming to take his bride back.
I think B says that. Doesn't B say her husband came to like welcome her or something, and Fitz is like, maybe, and B's like, that's what I think.
Really?
I
Okay,
don't
what the fuck?
remember. I have to read that again.
You guys don't remember that? Let me see. I'll see if I can find it. Because B
Whoa.
definitely, she asks, how did she die? And Fitz tells her, and B's like, oh, she saw her husband. And Fitz is like, maybe, and she's like, yeah, I think so.
Oh my god, I love that.
One thing I also love about like Patience here is I feel like I didn't like recognize or give enough credit to this the first time I read this, but like all of her actions here I feel like were inspired or like spurred by like seeing Ketrican, how Ketrican operated last book. Because she like last book she was like, oh no, I can't do that. Ketrican's so cool. But like I think just like being around Ketrican and seeing, I was like, no, okay. I can have faith in myself and do this too. I love like that sort of like inspiration. And like, and I even think like her methods are fairly similar, like gathering the guard tour, just going out on like I'm just going out on a random horse ride. It's like, yeah.
I bet also part of her motivation is for like keeping Buckkeep safe and like all of that stuff is to make sure that Ketrican has a country to come home to. And like Ketrican and the heir, the like Farseer heir has a home, and that's why Patience is like so gung ho and like take charge.
I think it's going to be really hard to find it in this.
Perhaps.
Oh, definitely. We should find it. We'll find it when we do our read of it. We just need to make a note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't even think we need to make a note. I
I
think we'll like all jump on it.
Yeah, we'll be like, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. And then I grabbed it and I was like, I'm overwhelmed already.
Yeah, that's a big book.
But this is my copy that's signed.
Damn.
The first book you ever read.
Yep.
Wait, did you get like the signed copy first?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I didn't know who she was, and I got it I got a ticket to see George R. Martin and Robin Hobb like speaking together at some event in London. And if you bought a ticket, you got a signed copy of like her most recent book. And that was this one.
Wild.
Yep. And I opened it and it said book 1 of Fitz and the Fool. So I was like, oh, book 1, no problem.
Book 1 of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It had a jacket on it, but I threw it away because I hate book jackets.
You throw them out?
They make me feel rage.
I completely get it.
They slide around and they fall off and they're never even and it drives me bonkers.
I always think about doing what the libraries do and like taping mine on, but I hate how like when they do tape it, it gets like bunchy on the like sides, and I hate that. So like I'll take mine off for reading and then I put it back on when I'm done like reading the chapter or whatever, because I'm like I still want to see the cover and I want it to be beautiful, but like I can't have it keep slipping around in my hands while I'm reading.
Yeah.
I could never take the book jackets off. I would just have like a bunch of like unrecognizable tomes on my thing, and it's like, well,
well, it has it on the binding.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
So I always know.
Yeah, but who really looks
Okay,
at
and
that?
it's like it's I guess it's not like the covers are like that very good anyways.
Well,
So.
and yeah, the cover was just like words and then I think a bee. So it wasn't like interesting.
Well, that sounds so much prettier than the ones with the like model like romance guys with the sword like this,
And
looking
their shirt
pensive off into the distance.
Uh-huh. Oh, they really didn't know how to draw Fitz.
They never do, and like, no, they just don't do it. It's not him.
Mm-hmm. It's really funny because I'm part of like a Discord server for like Realm of the Elderlings discussions, and there's like a random artist who draws their OCs, but their OCs look exactly like sort of like the fandom interpretation of Fitz and the Fool. So people are like, "Oh my god, there's new fan art!" Every time they post something, they're just like, "This looks like it would fit in this scene," and it's like, this is how far we've come. Just like taking stuff from completely unrelated properties and being like, yes, this is my Fitz and Fool.
Well, that's what I did, a couple like, in the last book, I found something on Instagram from, like, one of the publishers was posting fan art from, like, a different book series, and I'm like, "Nope, this is, like, a female version of Fitz and the Fool," or something like that.
Basically, what we're saying
So
is, Hob, we're starved. If you get
yeah,
if you're like,
call out to all the artists, can we please get some nice fan art for our boy?
mhm.
That's like correctly showing his features, because so much of it is like, here is white person, and it's like,
Mhm. No scars, beautiful face,
He
no
doesn't have
right,
the
broken
badger lock.
right.
I think they get the badger lock in like the last trilogy, but like it takes them a while.
Yeah, and at least for my copies of, like, Tawny Man, I think they all show the Fool.
Yeah, my copies of Tawny Man all show the Fool, and they're all so ugly. Like, they make the Fool look so ugly, and the Fool is not an ugly person in my
I think
head.
I like this one with the tattoo, which
Yeah, that's the only one that I was, gonna say that, I'm like, yeah.
I'm still not sure if like the tattoo if this is supposed to be Eliana or the Fool, but like it's one of them. I think it's supposed.
I thought it
Is
was
it
the Fool.
Yeah,
blonde?
Yeah.
yeah, is
Fool.
blonde. So, um, for this chapter,
Yeah,
Back into, first series or first trilogy.
right. I have a interesting theory. Um, I think because Fitz has never really been able to like skill spy on Molly before. Not that he's super tried, but like he's never actually trying to do anything. He always just does it, and he never was able to or never did before. And now that she's pregnant with a baby that we know is skilled,
And becomes the skill master.
yeah, I wonder if somehow Nettle is acting kind of as like a conduit.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I
mhm.
would not doubt it.
And it would make sense why we always see things from Molly's perspective. Then, like we see like
Right.
from Molly's eyes.
And
Yeah.
if you remember correctly, once Nettle's born, he's seeing through Nettle's eyes.
Yeah, that's true.
And he stops seeing through Molly's eyes.
Mhm.
Mhm. I also think it's just that like I think that after like the torture in the dungeons, I think his skill walls are just fucked. Like this
Yeah.
whole section, he's like so exposed to the skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second Will finds him, he's like gone.
Hmm. And he just keeps getting pulled into visions of like the soldier or like sorry the villagers and stuff. So,
Right.
I
but like
also
I think that like him being
does
called
he
back to Molly makes sense. Like why Nettle would be like an anchor point for that.
Mhm. Does Fitz even remember to put his walls up? Because for someone who's, like, so terrified of Will and so guarded, it doesn't seem like he puts his walls up at all when he's sleeping. Like, he doesn't tell us that he, like, reinforced his walls or, like, put up his skill walls. Like, I feel like he's just, like, open to the world, and he's like, "Geez, I hope Will doesn't come and get me again."
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
what's
it's one.
he doing?
It felt weird because I'm like Fitz can't be the stupid. Another part of me, wow, Fitz is the stupid.
Yeah. Poor
Yeah.
boy Candy.
He can be pretty stupid.
Well, and I feel like if he's with Night Eyes, he's probably just thinking of, like, right now in the moment, and he doesn't even think about the skill or, like, I think he really doesn't think about the skill much until he's either using it or, like, is waking up with a headache from using it and is like, "Oh, the skill's back again."
And I think he's so used to relying on Night Eye's senses to alert him of any danger that he's focusing on like the physical world around him and what can get to him rather than like protecting his brain.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, everyone thinks he's dead, so
So he thinks he's safe then.
Right.
Yeah, but after the first time he skill walked, you would think that he would learn because Verity, like,
Verity
he
where
meets
him.
Verity. Yeah, and Verity's like, "Oh, like, you gotta make sure you like, I didn't know you knew how to skill walk," and then Fitz, like, doesn't even acknowledge that, like, his dreams are just him skilling out into the world.
Mm.
And then, like, I think in the last chapter of this section, that's when Fitz is really dreaming about, like, he visits everybody. He, like, skill walks and visits Patience, I think. Yeah, because Patience and Lacey are talking to Shade, and he visits, like, Molly and Burrich, and then he, like, wakes up and he's like, "Oh, like, I woke up with a headache and I don't know why." And I'm just sitting there like, Fitz? Like, it's the skill. It's a skill headache. What are you doing?
Mhm. But yeah, the previous statement where it's like, the first time when Fitz did this, he should have learned. I feel like that's just evergreen. You can just take that and replace whatever action it is. Just like
Yeah.
Fitz and not learning. Name a more iconic duo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or learning only the wrong lessons. Where like Fitz is like, it was time. Like the last line of this chapter is like, it was time I began depending only on myself. And it's like, Fitz, like, we don't have to, like, yes, you do need to become more self-reliant, but remember what we talked about extremes. You can still rely on some other people.
Yeah, and he's like, "Fuck everyone. My wolf is leaving me. Like, I can't.
And it's
I
so
can't
funny
rely
how
on any."
jealous he is.
I know. And like he was like annoyed with Night Eyes for being jealous when he was with Verity and spending time with everybody else. But now when Night Eyes is like off living his own life, Fitz can't handle it.
Cannot cope.
Honestly, I'm kind of vindictively happy about that because like it's like this whole time Fitz always like laments like in like the previous two books. He's like, "Oh, I'm so alone." Meanwhile, Patience is like, "Hi, Fitz, do you want someone to talk to?" And he's like, "Fuck you," and like just walks away.
Yeah.
The, and meanwhile, Night Eyes is actually factually alone with no one else in the world, and Fitz is like, "Just give me a moment. I'll spare some time for you in like a week or so." So like,
Mhm.
I think Fitz finally getting to understand what being truly alone is. It's like, okay, maybe hopefully a little bit of a wake up call, and then it's like, no, it's a wake up call in the exact wrong way.
And I feel like Fitz would have handled it a little bit better if he wasn't like traveling and on his own. Like I think if he was back at Buckkeep, he would be like he would have enough things to keep him busy that he wouldn't think about it and worry about it all the time. And like yes, he would still miss Night Eyes and like want to reach out to him, but it would make it a little bit easier. But now he's like, I don't need anybody. I can't rely on anybody. Everybody leaves me. Like, you gotta calm it down. He's coming back.
This portion in this chapter where it's just Fitz and Night Eyes like traveling, I remember like being one of my favorite parts of this trilogy just because there's like a comfort and a simplicity to it that's just like the two of them together, and there's little bits of humor, and like the I laughed out loud when it said sometimes I would be awakened by a rough poke of a cold nose, and
I
when I
know.
sit up I discover he was deliberately standing on my hair.
It's so freaking cute.
It's so cute, and it's like a really short period of time, but it's just them like hunting and traveling and
And playing.
bonding and playing. Yeah, it's really cute. And then Night Eyes pieces out and everything's sad again.
Big vibes
Yeah.
of like the start of Tawny Man, where they're just in the
Yeah.
cabin.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that they annoy each other because, like, I feel like in the last book, in like Royal Assassin, it was mostly like Night Eyes being annoying to Fitz, but in this one, we do see Night Eyes get a little bit annoyed at Fitz, and he's like when he's trying to sleep and all Fitz does is, like, worry and try and talk to him and, like, bug him and stuff, and Night Eyes is like, "Sleeping is serious," he told me gravely, and, like, I loved that so much because like, Night Eyes, I feel you. Night Eyes is sleeping is very serious, and, like, he's right, and Fitz needs to just go to sleep.
Yep.
Night is like, but I have no one else left but you. And Night is like, yeah, okay, I'm all you need. Just like sleep. Okay, we get it.
You won't have me much longer if you don't go the fuck to sleep.
Mhm. They really lay it on
And then I
thick.
think
And then
he,
he's
like,
like, I
moved.
cared more for Night Eyes than I did Burrich or Chade. And it's like, this
Yeah, no
whole,
shit.
yeah.
And then Night Eyes can't take Fitz's tossing and turning, and he, like, gets up and leaves to go sleep somewhere else. I love that. They're like an old married couple.
Honestly. Doesn't like Fitz literally says that about like Hilda and Black Rolf. Like, yeah, they
Yeah.
reminded me of like an old married couple, yeah.
Mhm. Speaking of Night Eyes, another thing that really struck me was, Fitz, like, thinking about his bond with Night Eyes, and he said there were differences between us. Neither of us claimed superiority. And it just reminded me that this really wasn't always the case between them because at the beginning of their relationship, it was very different. And Fitz had like, you know, shown his authority over Night Eyes and been like, I'm the leader and had to be tough. And now it's kind of nice to see how they've grown. Well, they both have grown up, and then they've both grown together to see each other as equals instead of Fitz having to, like, force Night Eyes to do stuff. Like, they've really matured, I think, a lot as individuals and then also together.
Definitely.
Kind of reminds me also of like Burge and Fitz's relationship. And like I think it's like the start of this book when like Fitz is in like full wolf mode. It almost feels exactly like when Fitz was having to like tell Night Eyes like no, stay here. Like it's like the way that Burge talks to Fitz in those moments feels almost exactly like that. And then yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
they do end up getting to like I remember in Tawny Man where like the basically Burge is like he was my son and then he was one of my closest friends. So there is like they get to that level of like we trust each other and there's like that equal parity there.
Yeah, there's kind of like a mirror
Mhm,
between Fitz and Night Eyes' relationship and then Burrich and Fitz's.
mhm. Which Burge would hate to hear. He's like, "Ugh, the
You know, and Burge can get over it because Night Eyes saved his baby's life, so, like, he should accept Night Eyes as his son as well.
mhm. And like Burge, you hypocrite, you loved Vixen, so like shut up.
Yeah. I forgot about her for a minute.
I mean, it's easy. Like Burge is like, you don't remember this. Forget about that.
Mhm. I really loved when Fitz is thinking about, like, the wit and stuff like that, and he says, "One does not have to be witted to know the companionship of a beast, and to know that the friendship of an animal is every bit as rich and complicated as that of a man or woman," and I love that because, like, it's true even in our life, I feel, because, like, the way that we interact with our animals or, like, our pets or just, like, animals in general, like, it can become like a friendship and it can become that like deep connection. And sometimes I think that we can connect with animals better than we can connect with other people because they don't need that like verbal communication to like have a connection with each other.
And like it's easier to I think have an unconditional loving relationship with animals than it is with people.
Oh,
Because
for sure.
because when an animal loves you, it's definitely unconditional, and usually once you start loving your pets, it's also unconditional that way. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like animals just kind of like you can just hang out with them and like just be with each other during hard times and like you guys, there's no pressure with a relationship with an animal. When I feel like we like put like pressure on each other for no reason within our like person to person relationships.
Mm-hmm. I don't think I had any other notes for this chapter. Did either of y'all?
I think my only other note was about the Haragar.
Oh my god, yes.
Because so I'm minding my own business, reading about Fitz like traveling through Pharaoh, and then he's talking about how him and Night Eyes like picked off one of the Haragar to like eat, and like he's smoking the meat, and I'm like, okay, like what the fuck is a Haragar? So I like looked it up trying to figure out what it was. And apparently this is a fictional animal that Hobb made up. At least that's what I got from like a quick Google search, and there's like a wiki, it's called like Plenty Wiki, that's all about Robin Hobb and like the series. And I guess they're like wild pigs that live in Pharaoh.
This is the funniest
And it
shit
was
because the article is one line, and that one line is the line in this chapter, which talks about them. So it's like thank you, book, very cool. Okay, they're swine. We got it.
so weird. But
It is
like
really weird because, like, outside of dragons and serpents, which are like integral to the story, all the other animals are real animals, like ferrets and bears and wolves and bucks and deer. So it's
and
really
then we
weird.
get this weird little pig.
Right. Like, why not just say pigs?
But I wonder if she was like trying, not even trying, like I wonder if she just did this because like Pharaoh is a strange land for Fitz in general. So it kind of makes sense to have like weird animals that we're not used to be like such a normal part of everyday life in this like weird, different country. Not country, but like land. So she had to make something up. But I feel like we need Harrigar watch, or whatever, because I have seen it so many times after making this note. I'm like, oh my god, it's everywhere now.
Wait, really?
Really?
I saw one other
I
one.
remember it once.
Yeah.
I saw it at least 3 times, and I was like about to start writing it down, but I'm like, nah, like I don't need to do that. And now I guess I should have.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'll have
So weird.
Yeah, it's so like out of character for Hobb that I almost wonder if like it's just one of those things which like isn't recorded on the internet, but is sort of like a colloquialism in an area for like a type of wild pig, and that
Yeah,
he just
or I
like
wonder if it's like an extinct version of it. But you would think that a quick Google search would help, like would figure that out. It's so weird. Unless I just don't know how to like search.
no, like I know
Like,
I googled it too, and I couldn't find anything.
No, I just
it's
keep
so
getting
weird.
like family history or surname origin.
Yes! That's what I saw too, and I'm like, "What the heck?" Maybe she had, like, a neighbor that she hated, and that was their last name, and so she named it, like, her, like, random little pigs after that.
Mm-hmm. That is shout out to my brother-in-law, Kyle Harrigar.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so the next chapter is chapter 8, Tradeford. Wow, we finally quickly made it to our destination here. Oh, oops, what happened here?
Book's basically almost over now.
There's just like one more chapter, he gets to kill Regal, quick, neat ending. But yeah, so essentially, Fitz realizes that he has been, after losing Night Eyes, he has been kind of not taking very good care of himself. Um, so he like cleans himself up a bit, gets directions to Tradeford, has a series of worrisome skill dreams on the way there, and then sort of like cases the joint at Tradeford, and is like, wow, this place is hella beautiful and amazing.
Mm-hmm. I would live in Tradeford if I had to live in the Six Duchies.
Mhm.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. But I feel like I wouldn't like Pharaoh as a country.
The
Or as
people
like
feel like whack.
The people seem racist or
well,
something.
and the land, like I
If they
wouldn't
were
want.
in our world, they would all be racist.
It's like the South
Yeah.
in at least like the United States. It's
Mhm.
definitely like the South. But I feel like it reminds me of like the plains and like that kind of area. But it's like deserty and weird. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think I'd like to live on that land. Like it seems a little
I would
dry.
if I was rich and I could buy everything that I needed to
Yeah.
eat and drink.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But not if I had to actually work the land.
It's
It also
weird because
doesn't
like
make the best for a dreamscape trip.
it feels like economically and like geographically sort of California-ish, but then like culturally
The
like
South.
yeah, or like
Hmm.
the upper class are like the kind of like there's a very like California type of like haughty, and I think that like the people who are like around Regal are like that, and then you have like the normal people who are just like we're just here to be racist and just to complain and blame all of the other duchies for our problems.
Mhm. Well, I think that we do kind of get a little bit more insight into this. I think it's later on. I think it's in the last chapter in this section, but we do kind of realize that they really don't know that much about what's going on because it's so far removed from them. Like it's not like they can travel easily to Buck to kind of witness and experience the war for themselves. It's like something that's so far away from them, they don't realize like why should I care about this?
And we know
And they
like
also don't know the severity of everything that's going on too, I think. And it
and
doesn't help that, like, Regal's spewing lies and, like, saying that everything's fine and that, like, Buck just sucks.
it's been going on for a while because we know like when Birch and Fitz passed through here at the start of Royal Assassin, like these sorts of rumors were already like well underway. They were like, wow, Regal was super kingly and Queen Ketrican the fish or whatever.
Yeah. And they, I think, were talking shit about Verity or, like, at least King Shrewd and saying how, like, they can't take care of themselves or their country or whatever.
Mhm. Okay, but despite all of this, I kind of get why like Regal's thing that like the castle should be or like the monarch should be in Tradeford because it feels like it's equidistant from the coast and the mountains, so it's like nice in the center. And even if Buck has like strategic military importance, if it's going to be like the first site of an attack, it feels like it doesn't make sense to have like your king and court there because if they have to come up the river to attack you, it makes sense to like stay in your fortified center of the country thing. And it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it feels like such a nice center of trade and culture as well. So I'm like, I
It
kind of
doesn't
get
seem
it.
protected at all, though.
That's what I was thinking too, like, it's not gonna be a safe spot for, like, if they do get past Buckkeep, like, you're basically screwed, I think.
No, very
Yeah.
true. But also, like, if you are in Buckkeep, if the getting past Buckkeep, if they've gotten past you, you're dead. So it's like, okay, well, war
That's
lost. So
let's run to the Mountain Kingdom.
mhm.
Fitz does more like skill walking in this chapter and ends up seeing like the Duke of Bairns and his daughters like defending their keep, and I thought that was written in a really cool way because the POV like subtly shifts when Fitz kind of takes over Celerity's body and
Yeah.
saves her. Like he's referring to himself as like I picked up the axe and I did whatever, but then it says like severing the hand of the man who sought to take my father's head about Celerity's father. Like I loved how the kind of melding was written
Yeah,
there.
they, like, their, like, consciousnesses intermingle. It's really cool.
Yeah, Hobb continues to be the queen of amazing POV switches or POV writing.
Also, like, Fitz not, like, decides, but, like, the last straw that, like, makes him take action is the fact that, like, Celerity's gonna get killed. So, like, you guys, it's gotta mean something, right? It's gotta mean something.
Although, to play devil's advocate, he compared her and her sister to hawks, and he was just recently saying that hawks don't like him.
Hawks don't like him, but that doesn't mean he can't like hawks. Like, didn't he try and, like, take care of the hawks, and Birch was like, "No, don't do it, like,
Hawks
we don't like you," so, like,
Yeah.
he could still like them.
So
Obviously, it's not gonna be Molly, but, like, he saved her for a reason.
Definitely.
And I think he says even in this chapter, like, though I had never loved Celerity, or though I could never love Celerity, like, I still had, like, a great amount of respect or admiration for her, like, I feel like love builds on, like, respect and admiration, so, like, I can hold out hope.
I love how
I
you gloss over the I have never loved her, like, unimportant.
It doesn't matter, you could still grow to love her.
You're King Shrewd.
Yeah. I just want him to have a stable home life, and I feel like he can't get that with Molly right now, because Molly's off with hot Birch, like, you can't. Also, she thinks he's dead, so, like, you know, that does throw a wrench in their relationship.
And Celerity doesn't?
I think Celerity would be fine if he just showed up. She'd be like, "Alright, so this is what happened. You died, you came back, let's go. Help me save my kingdom."
I feel like when, like, Fitz meets Celerity in the last trilogy, there's, like, some implication of her maybe being, like, either skill or wit sensitive. Am I making that up, or, like, does that actually happen?
I don't remember.
know. Yeah, I don't remember either.
Okay. I wanna go back and check, because I feel and that would, like, make a lot of sense for why that would be another reason maybe that Fitz only, was able to, like, take action with her, because, like, it's like she was skill sensitive, so he was able to, like, essentially like Verity used to ride, Fitz just like that. But yeah, if that isn't the case, then, like, whatever, but, like, I was like, this scene made me think, like, feel like I remember that.
I feel like you have to be very strong in the skill. Like, the user who's taking over someone has to be really strong in the skill, and then the person who's getting, like, taken over has to have some affinity for it for sure. Otherwise, it wouldn't work because, like, yeah. Right?
That's the impression that I get as well. Like, there has to be some type of thread there. Although they say that the fool, or it's at one point they say the fool does not have any skill, but they're able to, the coterie is able to, like, take over him to get the information out of Fitz of where Molly is. So they
Well, yeah, I mean, it does make sense a little bit because, like, it's not like all the Red Ship Raiders were skilled, and, like, Verity uses his skill influence on them. So, like, I think in some aspects, you don't have to be skilled to have the skill touch you and influence you, but in other aspects that are, like, more major, it does make sense.
I feel like we're sorry. I was just gonna say, I feel like we are seeing this shift that Regal makes from just, like, sullen mommy's boy to full-blown evil king, and it seems a little bit abrupt to me. Like, having revenge on his father because he thinks he killed his mom, like, makes somewhat sense, but the whole, like, fighting ring thing and, like, abusing animals and putting forged ones in a ring to watch them, like, fight to the death because you think it's fun seems a little bit like a jump.
Well, I think that he got kind of a taste of, like, violence as entertainment with watching Fitz, and he realized, like, "Oh, like, I kind of like this." And
Yeah.
so he just was like, "Let me see what
Right.
else I can do," and it kind of grew from there, and because Fitz was gone for so long, we didn't get to see the progression. We just see it at its, like, most extreme when it has already grown to be what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I feel like nothing is past Regal, so I didn't really like.
No, not anymore, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, he does suck. He's always sucked, though.
Sucks big time.
Going back to like the start of this chapter, I love like how if Night Eyes leaves for like 2 seconds and Fitz forgets how to take care of himself. He's like, "Well, I'm going to walk through the swamp. I'm going to completely mess myself up. And now that I don't have Night Eyes, my sense of smell is basically zero. I have COVID. I can't smell anything. What do you mean I smell bad? Just like
Night Eyes leaves and Fitz gets COVID.
Yeah.
And honestly, okay, you know what? That's not even Fitz is trying to practice what do you call it? Social distancing. He's really going hard on that. So
Yeah. Also, right at the beginning of this, we have the, like, intro talking about Duke Bronte being murdered and, like, rest in peace. Rest in peace, Duke
Liked
Bronte.
him.
He did what he could, and he was a good guy, and
yeah, I will like Fitz says, I will never forget the cloak he threw to me. That was him, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
the kindness he gave.
Mhm.
Going back to Regal, and actually, I guess this is talking about, Duke Bronte. Fitz says, "For one irrational instant, I blamed it all on Regal," and this is talking I think this is right after Fitz wakes up from, like, his skill walking where he, like, saves Celerity and stuff, and, I mean, like, it is
I don't think it's
all Regal's
irrational.
fault.
Right.
It definitely is, like, it's Regal's fault, so, like, even though Fitz doesn't realize it and he thinks that it's irrational, like, it actually isn't. Like, all of this is Regal's fault, so blame on Fitz.
And I mean, okay, like in this trilogy, Regal is like the one like villain with a face, and then the red ships are just sort of like nebulous. So like it makes sense. Like Regal
Yeah.
is the villain, even on like a meta level.
Yeah.
My last note was more of a general one, but it's like I think this was like an example which really like made me like notice it, where the first time through reading these books, I wouldn't like notice like Elfbark dropping his mood because I'm like, Fitz is like usually emo, anyways, and also like he's like there are a lot of times where like the situation is bad, and so it feels like his mood changes because he's hearing about a new thing in his situation. But like you read, he'll like drink Elfbark and immediately like hate himself for like the weird he's like here it was like, oh yeah, my clothes suck, I could not bear to be seen in these tattered clothes in front of everyone, and it's just like, oh wow, okay, yeah, but it's done so
Yeah.
subtly, and like
Usually he
and Fitz
doesn't
is so
care.
dumb that it's like you can kind of like be drawn into his perspective of like, yeah, no, Elfbark is great, until like Tawny Man, where you really start to see how bad it is.
Mhm.
Well, and you know something's going on if Fitz cares about, like, what he looks like in any way.
And his clothing.
Right. Because usually he's like, I don't want to wear nice clothes. Can I please just wear the leggings that I've had on for 3 weeks?
And now he's like, "I look like a homeless bum, I'm so ugly."
Right.
I think the last note that I have is about Regal again because, like, I mean, if Fitz is obsessed with Regal, aren't we as well?
Yep.
And Fitz is like, I was startled to hear of him spoken of as a Mountwell king, the name of his mother's royal line. Then I decided it suited me just as well that he did not name himself a Farseer. It was one less thing I had to share with him. And like it just made me notice the difference between Fitz now and Fitz at the beginning of Assassin's Apprentice, more than like, oh, like Regal doesn't want to be a Farseer, because like at the beginning of this whole series, Fitz starts off as this like nameless, really like nothing person
Nameless
longing
the
to be
dog
part of a
boy.
family and like yeah, longing to like have something and like have a claim and a tie to his family. And like now he owns the Farseer name so much and like it's become so much a part of him that he's like happy that he doesn't have to share his name with Regal anymore. Like I really loved that.
Yeah, I noted that down too, and then I forgot that I made a note of it. But it's like interesting that he's so brainwashed by his mom that he just like completely ditches the royal name and starts taking her last name to separate himself out. But then I was like, if there wasn't so many things that said that he looked like a Farseer, I would think that maybe he wasn't.
Yeah.
Wait, and this is crazy, but this might answer a question that I had last book, which is like, the fool keeps being like, okay, as long as there's a member of the Farseer line alive, then we're on the good timeline. And then I guess like the question was like, okay, why doesn't Regal count for that? And then it's like here, it's like, okay, he changes his name to Mountwell. He doesn't like he's a Farseer,
He's
not
not
even
a
in
Farseer.
name anymore. So it's like
Yeah, his identity is more of
Mountwell.
Mountwell and more of like his mother than it ever was Shrewd or Farseer.
Like he doesn't even have the Farseer magic.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
He doesn't even have the skill, really. I mean, a little bit, enough that he can like leech off of Will or kind of piggyback, but not enough on his own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's the only like true Farseer that doesn't.
It's funny that Desire like tried to make the claim that Regal is so much more royalty and so much more like he should be king over his brothers, but he is like lesser than his brothers because he doesn't have that like wild queen like blood where
It's,
it would strengthen him in skill. And like it's kind of such a vast difference between like the strength and intensity of Verity and Chivalry's skill versus the like little whisper and like fart of Regal's.
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting too that they have the same mother, him and Galen, but Galen is skilled and Regal's not, when you would think Regal genetically should be the one that's more skilled because his father is Shrewd, who's skilled.
Yeah, I think
So,
as we
Well,
go into Tawny Man, I think we start directly based. But then
mhm.
like the skill world and is learning that his own skill, which he didn't have, just one. So the and like Regal like starts to like manifest the skill only at the end when he's like learning about it more. So Galen's like training probably was like the big thing.
Yeah. And I don't think he was ever that strong in the skill anyways. So like I think the strength that he got from the skill was just because of the skill scrolls and everything. It wasn't even like he had a knack for it.
right. And Shade is never that. Like, he's good enough to be able to relay messages and stuff, but he's never a strong skill user.
Yeah. Though he does have a strong pull to, like, the skill river and, just jumps in at every chance that he can.
He's like the definition of addictive personality.
For sure.
And it's like it's so ironic just because like he's like I've controlled myself all my life. Never mind, time to stop doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's been controlled all his life, so that could be part of it.
Mhm. Once again, Fitz's father, stop passing on your maladaptive traits to your son, please. Okay, I don't have any more notes for this chapter. Do y'all?
Nope.
I don't.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the ninth chapter, Assassin, and this is the big this is the one with all the action. Uh, Fitz infiltrates Tradeford Palace, um, attempts to assassinate Regal, but unfortunately makes a bit too much of a scene before he even ever gets to see Regal, and thanks to Will's prodigious talent with the skill, is captured, put into an almost inescapable spot, but thanks to Verity coming in as like a Duze Machina, manages to barely escape with his life.
No thanks to the coterie.
Mhm.
Tricks him.
We were just talking about like Fitz and like his clothing thing, and I love like how at the start he's like, "Oh, all of these like clothes that these nobles wear. They have laces, ribbons, bells, collars." And he's like, "I don't want any. I can't assassin in these clothes."
And then he like one sign of trouble, and he immediately takes his shirt off and wipes up a bunch of blood with it, which I think is like the dumbest thing he's ever done.
Mm-hmm.
He spends so much time trying not to look conspicuous, and then immediately takes his shirt off,
I'm like,
as if that's not going to make him super conspicuous.
mm-hmm.
I know, that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, they're not gonna notice a shirtless guy walking all over, like,
Right.
what?
And it's not like his hands were still red, so it's like,
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I have to clean up the blood, but it's like, you're not going to clean up all of the blood, and there's still a body.
okay.
Like,
While
Yeah.
we're talking about this, I'm like, Fitz, you absolute stupid motherfucker. Why you treated your knife with poison, so you would only have to stab them a little bit, right? So that we wouldn't have to have pools of blood, right? And then meanwhile Fitz is like, actually no, I coated them with poison just, as a treat. I'll just cut their throats open anyways.
he's not operating at his best in this chapter, for sure.
No, definitely not.
I do like
Not
that.
all cylinders are firing right now.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that he tells everybody he kills who he is, though. Like, it goes back to that the way he is at the end of Royal Assassin when he cuts Serene's throat, and then he's like, surprise. Like, he tells everybody that like Fitz chivalry as they're dying, and it's badass.
And like that's another thing of like him claiming that name, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, not just Fitz, but Fitz chivalry. It's like, yeah, I'm the rightful heir, and I'm coming for y'all.
Right. I'm the ghost of revenge.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like there's lots to talk about here, but my main impression was that Fitz fucking sucks without Night Eyes. Like without
Yeah.
like if Verity hadn't like been there to like bail him out, like he would have lost to Carrot and Burl. Will wouldn't have even had to get involved. Like Carrot and Burl would have just done their heavy-handed like fear blast, and it would just been over for him.
We also see in this chapter, like, how Fitz's poison worked on Will, and, like, his dead, like, fish eye thing. It's so scary. It makes Will so scary to know that he, like, has a bad eye now. For some reason, it makes him scarier to me.
I mean, big supervillain status.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All
Yeah.
he needs is like a hairless cat or like a white cat sitting on his lap that he's petting.
And that would be an amazing contrast to Fitz, like the cat versus dog dynamic.
Wolf.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was like a proper. I wish either Will survive this trilogy or like there's like a proper other confrontation at the end of this book, because Will is just like the most competent villain in the series, and I love him.
I don't think we see another, like, I was gonna say another, like, good skill villain, but the one guy in Fitz and the Fool trilogy that can, like, mask everybody is pretty good. His name starts with a V, like Vendelier or something.
Yeah, I cannot remember.
I don't remember.
Also, if I don't know if either of you have watched Arcane, but like, you have?
I am, I think, like 1 or 2 episodes in.
Okay,
So,
but
like,
you know what I'm mentioning this because like the Silco, the villain with like one eye. Like now, whenever I think of like Fitz, or not Fitz, whenever I think of Will, I think of like that kind of look.
I don't know. I'll have to look. I'll have to watch because I don't think I am very far.
He comes at
But
the end of the first episode. When
and I
they're
guess I'm not as far as I thought.
okay.
I think I'm at the part where they just like got down to the like they just took like an elevator down to this like sketchy like black market, I think.
Oh, okay, that's very early in. Okay.
Damn, I guess I'm not that far.
But yeah, if and when you do keep watching Arcane, there's like the like one of the main villains has like a look that's very similar to like what he has, like a huge like scar which covers up one of his eyes. So
I will definitely keep an eye out, and that guy will immediately be called Will. That'll be his name
yeah.
from then on.
Mm-hmm.
Something totally random from this chapter that I think that needs to be shared is the song that Fitz hears when he first gets into Tradeford is actually like, I guess, based on a real song. And Fitz is like, I listened for a moment to the faint notes of a familiar song about 2 sisters, one of whom drowned the other. To me, the wonder of the song was not a harp that would play by itself, but a minstrel who would find a woman's body and be inspired to make a harp of her breastbone. And I like, while I was reading that, I'm like, oh, like, this is familiar. And I remembered a post on Reddit about that exact like section. So I searched it in the subreddit and I found it. And it's actually really interesting. Like, I think there are a couple of songs that it could be in reference to, like our world songs. And it was really weird and like interesting to go through that and then to like remember that from reading this section.
Yeah, I like because I didn't recognize it until they talked about like the harp that would sing on its own, and I'm like, wait, I feel like I've heard. But yeah, is there like some significance to like what happens this chapter? Because I was like, this is she described this in so much detail that I feel like it has to be important, but I couldn't like think of anything.
I couldn't find anything either.
It reminded me of Kettle just because of like the one sister killing the other sister, but there's not enough other things that like relate back to Kettle's story in particular. So I don't think it's like a reference to that. But that's what it made me think of right away.
Man, it would have been so cool if like we hear the song here, Starling sings the song later, and Kettle like freezes up or something, and it's like, don't sing that one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I thought maybe the drowning was like a metaphor for the Skill River.
Mm-hmm.
But like, would the harp come in her story?
Well, I mean, it could have been like a little bit of both. Like, first you drown in the skill river, and then because you're just, like, kind of a burden on your family, you're just this drooling, like, idiot, they actually drown you to, like, kind of lose the dead weight.
Yeah.
Or like the harp that sings or whatever, it could just be like a embellishment because like it would make sense like a kettle's like 200 years old or some bullshit. Like so
Mhm.
they
Right.
it would make sense for like the story to change over time.
Yeah, but I did think that it was odd that that was so detailed and, like, it doesn't seem like it has that much significance, but I think that it just kind of strengthens the, like, atmosphere and environment of Tradeford and kind of what Regal finds entertaining and what he enjoys is a lot of things that have, like, violence and, like, also it kind of can tie back into, like, his relationship with his brothers because he's, like, trying his best to kill Verity and, like, I mean, people think that he's dead because of what Regal said, so, like, he's kind of already killed off Verity without having to actually do the deed.
Mhm. Okay, so I think the thing that we can all agree is the most impressive part of this chapter is when Will like leads Fitz to like their room. Just we've been talking like the whole of like I think like the past 3 or 4 episodes about how Hobb is amazing at like perspective shifts. But this one is even crazier to me because Fitz is like right before it's like wow, it's crazy what a master can do with the skill, and like is like this really explicit thing of like ding ding ding, pay attention, but like
Mhm.
God, it's so well written where it's like oh, was this here? Oh, this feels weird. Oh, well, whatever. Okay, this is a minor detail. Keep going. And then like the weird like sudden emotion of like elation that he feels, and it's like all of like these like little details. It's hard to articulate, but it's just a really well written scene.
Well, and, like, the dizziness and the double vision that Fitz sometimes gets when he, like, moves too quickly and, like, is too frantic, it's incredible.
Mhm.
Well, and like the fact that as a reader you feel as confused as Fitz when suddenly the room is different and you're like, "Oh, he found Regal's room." Like, and he keeps forgetting like he'll think I need to get out of here. They all know that I'm in here and they're going to find me, and then it'll be like Regal's room. Like he's getting distracted and his focus is shifting and you're like getting confused as the reader cuz you're like, "What are you doing?"
It's like, wait, didn't he
Well
already find Regal's room? What's going on?
well,
Right.
and
Realize.
he also doesn't use the wit the entire time he's in Tradeford, pretty much. Like, he is so only relying on his, like, physical senses, and he's like, "I pressed my ear up to the door to, like, hear if anybody was in there," like, the wit is so much more useful, why would you not, like, stretch out with the wit and see if someone's in there before just pushing your ear? Like, "What? Fits?"
Once again,
So, like, that
literally
I think
useless
that
without night
you
eyes.
understand that something's wrong.
Mhm.
That definitely shows something is not right with Fitz, and it's, like, such a subtle thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that is so true. Like he's not using all the tools in his toolbox at all.
And that's, like, the first thing that he would normally use, like, he relies on his wit sense for everything before even his, like, physical senses. That is what he relies on, and the fact that he's not using that is, like, alarming, or should have been to him at least.
Yeah, and it feels like he's so closed off to the wit, where it's like I feel like as he was going to die or like as he was killing himself, I feel like Night Eyes would like feel that and like reach out and be like, "Brother, what's up?"
Yeah.
I almost wonder if like because of the earlier thing, he was like almost deliberately closing himself off to the wit. He's like, "I don't want to see how Night Eyes is doing. He's probably having a great time."
Well, he does use the wit, like, for 1 second, and it's right he kills I think it's Verde he's killing, and he, like or it's the guard in the room, and then he's like, I felt his, like, 1 second he was there, and the next he wasn't, like, the skill bubble popping, but it was, like, with the wit, and then that's the last of the wit that gets mentioned, so maybe that's when Will is, like, finally kind of hooks onto Fitz and is, like, persuading Fitz to do all of this stuff, and that's why he stopped using the wit.
Maybe it did, but I thought that happened like a little bit later, where he feels Will pressing up on his thing, and then and like from that moment on, he starts having like the double vision and stuff.
Maybe.
Mm.
Or maybe, like, the push, like, Will using his force was kind of a distraction, like, he had already found a slight in, but he was using his force to try and get Fitz to relax a little bit.
Got you. It's like I'm here, and it's like Fitz is like, oh, okay, I don't feel Will on my mind anymore, so I'll relax a little bit. Okay, that makes sense
Yeah.
too.
I don't have to worry because my skill walls are up and they're strong, even though they're not.
Hmm. And I love like the thing of like, yeah, the 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 strongest walls can be breached by a sprig of ivy or whatever he says.
Mhm.
Will just has like great like I feel like Will has like great supervillain lines. They don't feel like out of place for Will. In another person, they would feel like dramatic or like overwrought. But like Will is the only one who could be like, "You would have been a worthy opponent. Save that in your conceit. You always underestimated me." And I'm like, "Damn, okay, shit."
I just made the connection between, like, Ivy and, like, I wonder if Will took that from Patience. And, like, he kind of figured out, "Oh, maybe I can do this by being subtle," like how Patience is, and, like, with Patience and her Ivy runners and all of.
It could be. I could see him using, like, trying to take influence from anyone he can take influence from.
Mhm,
Especially the people closest to Fitz, to try and get to know how his mind works so that he can get into Fitz faster.
mhm.
Right. One thing I noticed, and I put it in my notes for this chapter, but I had noticed it several other times in the book. I just didn't like actually note it down until now, but I've noticed quite a few mentions of nettles in this book. And maybe it was in other books too, and I just didn't put the pieces together, but I thought it was interesting that it's like, this is the book where Nettle's born, and she's mentioned Nettles, like, not a few times.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is the first book that it's, like, everywhere because I think that it was mentioned maybe once in the last book, and we all were like, "Oh, nettles," and then it was never mentioned again, but I have been seeing it so many times in this book too, so,
Mhm.
like, it's gotta be a little bit significant, right? And, like, I wonder if, like, Fitz can kind of pick up on, like, what's going on with Molly, and maybe she's thinking about, like, nettles, because like, doesn't she use them for help with childbirth or, like, something? Like, the plant had something to do with her pregnancy
I think she's like
before she gave
allergic
birth.
to it a little bit. I
I
think when
thought that, like, she used it, like, during like, when she was having contractions, like, during Nettle's birth or something, and or,
I
like,
do remember
something
you
weird like
mentioned in one of
that.
like
So, like,
the
maybe.
bridge Molly scenes.
yeah, we'll find out. I mean, we'll find out later on in this book, but I thought it would like. I remember Fitz being surprised that she named the baby that because I thought he said it was like a plant that she had a mild reaction to or something like that.
I don't know. I know that, like, nettles in general can do that to everyone, I think. I think they're like an irritant,
Right.
um, so, like, maybe that's it, but I wonder if, like, Molly's been dealing with nettles and, like, thinking about them, and that's why Fitz notices them so much more in
Right.
this book because he, like, skill walked with her a couple of times already, so he's, like, maybe, like, unknowingly picking up some things from her.
Mhm. But yeah, I didn't like note it until you pointed it out. But then I'm like, oh yeah, when when Fitz was scared of the forged one, he went and ran and hid in a patch of nettles. And here, before he goes to infiltrate the mansion, he leaves all of his non-assassin stuff in a patch of nettles. And it feels like, and again, this feels like it might be like reading way too much into it, or like, but if you wanted to make a jump, you could say it's like a metaphor for like, while like on the surface level he like his heart and his identity are with the people he cares about, he like abandons those to do what he sees as his duty, like his assassinating, and in the process he ends up like uh losing track of like the people he cares about, even though he still like places a lot of value for his identity in those people.
I kind of read it in a different way when he like hides into the nettles. It's like the nettles are protecting him from the forged ones, and then later on we see kind of nettle protecting Fitz from I think like Tintaglia or something. Like she does do some protecting of Fitz, like and it kind of I drew that kind of connection where it's like a protective type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
She also protects Thick a lot from his like bad dreams and from his seasickness and stuff. Like Nettle is always protecting people via skill dreams and stuff.
Mhm.
My last note for the chapter was basically just like I always find it hilarious that like Fitz is like does such a piss poor job of assassinating that like he doesn't even kill himself. Like he's so
Oh.
bad.
I think that in any other circumstance, he would have he would have known that the knife wasn't poisoned anymore, but, like, he was going through such a time of stress. First of all, this is, like, he's reliving his trauma because he's seeing so many people that are associated with, like, his dungeon experiences, and, like, he's got Will attacking him with the skill, so, like, I think on a better day, he would have known that he had nothing left on this, like, knife,
Mhm.
and honestly, I think that, like, him believing that he was killing himself was the only thing that really saved him right
Oh no,
there.
it saved his life. But yeah, the I just find it really, like when the two times he actually kills people, he's like, "I'm gonna use this knife as a knife. Disregard the poison." And then when he
Yeah,
actually remembers the poison, it's like it's no longer relevant.
yeah.
It's such a
Oh.
classic Fitz move. But also again,
My
yeah, it's not his fault.
I think my only other note for this chapter was it's just really sad when he's leaving and he takes a horse and he's like, "It's okay, Hands, it's just me." And then another time he's like, "It's me, Hands," and he fully expects him to recognize him and be like, "Oh, Fitz, hey, I'm so happy to see you that you're not dead because we're BFFs. Like, go on out, leave the stables, I'll get out of your way." And instead, Hands like says beast magic and immediately calls the guards. It's like this since Night Eyes left, Fitz has not caught a single break. Like everything he's done is unsuccessful. He's constantly like not even able to sleep because of skill dreams and shit. And then he sees like a friendly face for the first time in forever and that friendly face turns on him.
I know, he really can't catch a break.
Mhm.
But I do love that the horse that he takes is Regal's, and I wish that he would have just kept Arrow for himself, because how mad would Regal have been knowing that, like, Fitz is riding and, like, using his horse? Like, that would have been perfect.
Such a
But
power
he's such
move.
a good boy, and, like, he's so nice and, like, thoughtful for others that he, like, couldn't let Hands take the fall for that, and so, like, he, of course, sends him back. I'm like, "Fitz is a good boy."
And I think we hear in Tawny Man like that Hans is like alive and well and doing fine. Like I remember specifically because like he mentions like Hans has like a red-haired wife or something. Like he sees
Oh,
them when
yeah.
he sees them when he's like passing through the stables or something in Buckkeep.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Hmm. And yeah, you have to wonder like did that decision actually save Hans' life.
I wouldn't doubt it, especially considering like everything Fitz does has ripple effect and changes on like the whole world. And like because he's this catalyst, I bet like this one small decision to him made a literal lifetime of difference to Hans. Like it saved his life. Cuz Regal would think of any excuse. Like I'm sure Hans got a good whooping, but like he did not lose his life. And I think if he had been the reason that Arrow had gotten lost, he would have lost his life for sure.
Mhm. Regal would have been like, "Well, my prize horse has gone missing. Perhaps you will also go missing."
He'd say, "A life for a life."
Hmm. You know what? Regal valuing horse lives the same as human lives. Real king. We stand.
Mhm.
Okay. Are there any other notes for this chapter? Okay, and so our last chapter for the day, we're gonna end on a little bit of a wind down. Chapter 10, hiring fair. Um, aka Fitz gets a real job that isn't assassin. The- so Fitz goes up to what's the name of the town? I don't remember.
Oh, I can't remember either. Does it start with an L?
Oh man, okay. I'm gonna look it up, but like he goes to like a town where he hopes to get a nomad caravan to help take him to the mountains.
Blue Lake.
Hmm. To Blue Lake, and then from there to the mountains. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then oh yeah, and across the Vin River. Um, and so he ends up getting a job, essentially, like herding sheep. Uh, and then while he's there, he essentially hears a bunch of gossip, finds out that there's a reward for him and a reward for Shade, um, and he has another bevy of skill dreams, but it's mostly a wind down chapter as Fitz plans his next moves, which we kind of actually we didn't quite mention this, but Verity imprints Fitz with a skill command to come to breach him in the mountains after he saves him. So Fitz, despite wanting to do other things, has to make his way to the mountains ASAP.
I think that it's funny that the title of this chapter is called Hiring Fair, and then a couple chapters back we hear about like Tradeford having a hiring fair for like the king needs help building his like his king circle or whatever, his torture chamber circle. And Fitz used that as an excuse to go to Tradeford. And now, like, that's what he would tell people. And then now he's like actually at a different type of hiring fair.
Mm. Also, you were right. The town name does start with the L. It's called Landing.
Yes, I was close. I knew it was something.
Hmm.
I thought it was funny how he's like kind of laying there with all these other people looking for work, listening to rumors. And one guy's telling this story, and it says he's embroidering his tale of Ketrigan's evil ambitions and how she had lain with me to conceive a child we could use to claim the throne. And I was like,
Eyeballs, eyeballs, eyeballs emoji.
Uh-huh.
I made note of that exact thing. I'm like, we know this happens later.
right.
Mm.
But then Fitz is like, I wonder why Regal would let such rumors fly. And it's like, Fitz, you're smarter than that. Like, if I'm a dum-dum, and it's obvious to me that if the child Ketrigan's carrying doesn't have a valid claim to the throne, then Regal's claim is stronger. If that child comes back one day, which Regal doesn't know where Ketrigan went. He knows she left and she's pregnant. So
Yeah.
that's a threat to his rule.
Mhm. Again, once it's like when he loses Night Eyes, he loses all sense of like his ability to fight against the wit. When he loses Shade, his political thing goes out the window.
Right, it's like an obvious political move, and Fitz is just like, I wonder why Regal would let these rumors abound.
Yeah. It reminds me of like the start where like Fitz is like, oh, my illusions of myself have been stripped away. I believe myself a self-sufficient and clever fellow, and it's like, oh, you finally get it. You finally realize that you need to rely on other people sometimes.
Yeah. I really liked how much we learned about Birch's earring in this chapter, and the clan that it even came from, and that it was created by. Like, the detail was incredible, and I really loved it. And like, I love that Fitz is like, if Birch were here, he would have said to like give it away, but like, there's no way that I can do that. Like, it's still, I need it. It's like a connection, and like, even though he says like he's got to cut all his connections and like all his ties, he still keeps those special keepsakes from the people that he loves.
Like, he takes the name that Patience gave him in this chapter.
Mhm.
And he's
Mhm.
thinking later, like, man, Shade would laugh at me if he heard about how I tried to kill myself. And
Yeah.
it's like, in a chapter where, like, right after I had that exact same note where, like, yeah, I don't need other people. I'm going to throw away my old identity. Continues to think about everyone in his past life.
He misses his family.
Hmm.
Does.
But at least he's going back to Verity, and like he's gonna at least be reunited with his favorite uncle.
Hmm.
And
I was gonna
probably
say
the
his
most
only
competent
uncle.
of his like father figures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Verity's not always around and like not there to help, if Verity had time and raised Fitz, Fitz would have come out, I think, a normal and healthy human being. But because he was raised by all of these very flawed people, there's no chance.
Hmm.
Right. If people weren't trying to kill him the whole time he was growing up.
Hmm.
Yeah. If his grandfather had claimed him as a grandson instead of as an assassin or a tool,
Prior
could have
to
been
being on his deathbed.
right.
Hmm.
I thought it was funny that Fitz says Regal, I reflected, was capable of believing anything he wished to believe. Because my brain immediately was like, pot kettle. Like, that's exactly what Fitz does.
Mhm.
Believes whatever he wants to believe and ignores what he doesn't want to believe. So,
Or doesn't think too deeply
but that's
into
what,
the reason he believes his beliefs.
and that's what Shrewd did about Regal. So it's just clearly like a farcier flaw.
Yeah, it's a family trait.
Right.
If Fitz was alive now, he'd be on TikTok being one of like those manifesting TikTokers. He'd be like,
Mhm.
Yeah, he would.
mhm,
He would also be, I think, a major conspiracy theorist because our boy is paranoid forever.
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be a doomsday prepper, he'd be a conspiracy theorist, and he'd be a manifestation TikToker.
He would definitely be a doomsday. He would absolutely have a cabin out in the middle of nowhere, and he'd be like,
I don't know how he'd be on TikTok because he'd be off the grid, but, like, he would find a way. He would send it to other people and have them upload his TikToks, but, like, it
he would
wouldn't be
like, he would
Right.
record a video and send a thumb drive to like patients who like,
Yes.
or like to Chade, and he's like, the world needs to see this.
In
Mhm.
Johnny Man, he'd be like, my nephew's posting all my TikToks because I'm
Yeah.
he'd like mail everything to Dutiful.
Yes.
Okay, wait, going back to the earring, there's a line where it's like, Fitz is like, I wondered what the earring had come to mean to him, that he had given it to my father, and what it had meant to my father that he had kept it. And it's like, I wonder.
It's true love. That's what it is, you guys.
3 letters, Gay.
Yes.
It's like, it feels so explicit. Like, it feels like they're like, in case you didn't get it, just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, also while Fitz is at the dock and near the slaughterhouse, there's a mention of the squealing of Haragars. So I didn't notice it elsewhere,
They
but this
do
is the
come up.
second mention I had.
I think that there was one more earlier on. Like, between when he caught the first one and this, it was, like, talking about how the Pharaoh people, like, used them for stuff. I don't know. Or, like, Fitz tried to hunt them on his own or something, but there's definitely another mention of them for sure.
Okay.
Maybe it was, like, when he's in the swamp and he's like, "Even they won't hang out here, so it's kinda just me tromping along by myself," which is a bad idea. If the animals won't go into the swamp, why are you in the swamp? And also, why aren't there alligators or crocodiles in the swamp to eat him up? Like, I'm confused.
They all got scared off by him just, like he's thinking this stuff, but he's accidentally witch shouting it. He's like, "I hate it in the
Yeah,
swamp." And they're like, "What the
yeah.
fuck is this thing?"
This guy's too loud, let's get out of here.
Mhm. Um, I think my biggest note is I kind of wish in Tawny Man we'd gotten more evidence of how the people of the inland duchies had been affected by both their own bigotry and how that had been stoked by the propaganda of Regal. They sort of like really narrow that into like persecution of the wit, but I also feel like we don't get like there's a strong anti-Ketrick and anti-Mountain sentiment here, and we sort of like don't get the ripple impact of that into Tawny Man. So like I wish there was like still some lingering animosity between the coastal coastal and inland duchies, and like that could have been like handled in some way, because it feels like this sort of like vitriol is not the kind of thing that goes away in less than a generation.
Yeah. I think that maybe because she was seen, like, protecting and saving the, like, 6 duchies, or at least the coastal duchies at the end of this book, it, like, had a kind of effect like that where, like, she also in doing that and in protecting and clearing the coast of Out Islanders, she also opened up trade again from Buckkeep and, like, beyond, so, like, the trade islands and all of that stuff, but she also opened up trade again to the Mountain Kingdom, which Regal had, like, kind of closed off, so maybe they are kind of seeing the market boom again and attributing that to Ketrican, and that's why they have less, like, hatred toward her than they probably would have.
But also in this chapter, they say they believe that Ketrican's the one who closed off trade to the Mountain Kingdom in the first place, and like the economy
For
is like sort of booming in like Tradesford with like because we mentioned like the construction of like the King's Circle has like brought people. But though I guess
Yeah, but everyone's
though like the
complaining
point
about
of like her saving the whole six duchies makes sense. Like she came in with a bunch of fucking dragons, so like you gotta respect that on some level. I get that.
well,
Regal also takes back everything he said because Fitz makes him.
Fair, yeah.
and in this section too, we do see people complaining about how, like, there aren't as many, like, varieties, and there's, like, nothing that comes from outside of Pharaoh in all of these markets anymore because trade for everything is shut down.
Makes sense.
So I don't think that they have everything. I think they have, like, all of the stuff that they can get from Pharaoh and, like, Tilth or whatever. But I don't think that they've got much from, like, Buck or the coastal duchies for sure.
Yeah, even when Fitz is downriver, they mention they don't have anything. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my last note is like I think Fitz has like one of his skill dreams here, and in that dream it explicitly mentioned that like Burrich and Molly were there. And I think that's like the first like I feel like by this point you had to have like picked up on it, but this is like the first explicit thing of like Burrich and Molly are in the same place.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my last note for the chapter.
My last note is just hashtag piebald watch. We do get another talk of, like, the piebald prince, and it was when they're talking about, like, Kettricken laying with Fitz to, like, conceive a child, and they were saying, like, "Oh, we would have another piebald prince situation on our hands again," and it's definitely so much more fitting in this section because of the way that, like, I don't know, it makes so much more sense, and then also, I mean, it does happen. Like, we do get, like, Dutiful,
He's
although
witty.
not, like, looking piebald, he is very strongly witted, and, like, that is what the Piebald Prince is about.
Right.
But that's it.
I have no more notes.
Okay, and with that, we're almost exactly 2 hours. Let's go. So that's the end of today's episode. Next time, we're going to be covering chapters 11 through 15, which follow Fitz's treacherous journey to the mountains. But yeah, until then, we'll see you next week. Bye.